Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Scott Chase. You know Scott is the voice bringing you classic rock on KZ106 for the past 40 years. Scott, before I ask you whether you are Team Beatles or Team Rolling Stones, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
I've just got a little coffee in it right now. And,
is that normal for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every day. A little water. First thing, I drink some water.
Yeah.
And probably some juice, some fruit. Maybe some oatmeal, drink some coffee.
I do that water thing in the morning. I
It's
get
good,
up, have a nice big glass of water. I don't know if it does me any good, but it sure convinces my brain that it does.
I think it's got to do you some good. I'm in the Rolling Stones camp, by the way.
Oh, are you?
Oh, in a big way, yeah. All Stones. You ever seen the Rolling Stones live?
Yeah, 2 or 3 times, yeah.
Incredible show, man. The greatest rock band of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Nothing against Paul, nothing against Ringo, George Harrison, the Beatles, but yeah, I love the Stones.
The first time I saw the Stones was, I think, in 1978 in Memphis. And quite frankly, they were so drunk. It was one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my life. And then I saw them again in, I want to say 97 or 98 at the Pyramid in Memphis. And they were fabulous.
I was there.
Were you?
I was.
Yeah, they had obviously started to take it serious and started to take their health serious and just put on a fabulous show.
And even the last time I saw him, which was, a year or so ago, I mean, Mick's just got the energy. He's got, I think it's got something to do with doing what you love to do forever, being happy and smiling and being passionate about what you do for a living.
What a fabulous segue that is to talk about doing what you do, what you love to do, and doing it for a living. You're celebrating 40 years.
I started on New Year's Day in 1985. I had worked with Eric Page and Greg Schaefer in another market, the Evansville market for the same company. And then they came down here and they were in need of a program director and a midday personality. And Greg sent Eric to recruit me in Henderson, Kentucky. My station had been sold at the time. And they're all like, man, we're not going to change formats. Everything's going to be good. It was a top 40 station that went country about 6 months later. So I left and I came down here. I knew 2 people in Chattanooga. But I met so many friends, man. I just love this town. I watched it grow. Of course, the radio station is incredible. KZ106 is so solid, and it's been solid for since 1978.
It's been on there almost 50 years.
It'll be 50 years coming up, yeah. How about that?
That's pretty incredible. Well, I do want to talk about KZ and its legacy, but I want to start with how you started. You were born and raised in Evansville?
I was born in Evansville, Indiana, lived there until I was 17, and we moved across the river to Kentucky, Seabury, Kentucky, where my grandpa had some property. My dad grew up. And so I went to high school in Evansville, and then I was going to a community college, a University of Kentucky Extension College in Henderson, and taking, the various different classes. But one of the classes I had was a speech class. And so I'm giving these speeches, and the guy was teaching it was named Joe Solani. He smoked Chesterfields, short ones, in class.
Filter or non-filtered?
No filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one right after the other had this growly voice like that. He goes, have you ever thought about being in broadcasting and radio? I go, no, I'm just here trying to meet chicks and have fun, party, He goes, and he was in TV. And he did television and he did radio as well. It's just there's a small radio station out in the country at Anthoston, Kentucky. And it was literally out in the country. And they need a couple of announcers. And so another guy named Henry Hill, who became my best friend for life, and
the guy from Goodfellas? No,
we go to work. We go to work in this radio station. I work 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. spinning records, man. Yeah. I played records.
So you weren't like a lot of folks who get into broadcasting, being that kid at night sleeping or pretending he's sleeping in his room, but really listening to one of the Clear Channel stations that are coming in across the country, like WLS or.
Listen to WLS all the time, man. John Records, Landecker, Boogie Check, ooh, all the time. That's what I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
We cruise around while I was in high school and listened to WLS.
But the bug didn't bite you.
Not really.
So as you were growing up, you mentioned you moved. What were you doing for fun? How were you earning money as a kid?
Well, my first jobs were in restaurants. I was a busboy.
Yeah.
Early on. Well, I'm young too, probably 14, I guess.
Yeah.
At the Das Kolkerhaus. I remember my dad was in restaurant and bar hotel management, and so it was a natural. You work in a restaurant. Everybody should serve.
Oh, that's the hardest job you can have.
Oh, the best.
I worked in kitchens.
Kitchen stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't work in the kitchen, but I was in the kitchen all the time, and I watched the vibe. My oldest son works in the kitchen a bunch. So I did that. Worked for a bricklayer in the summer, for a couple of years, and then, went to college. And the guy picks me off. He goes, "Man, you got kind of a flair for public speaking. You ought to be in radio." And that's how I got in radio.
Not the typical, I just love it. I mean, you love it now, but someone directed you towards that. And that's similar to when we spoke to Jim Reynolds, kind of how he got into it. He had never thought about being a broadcaster until some high school counselors had said, "Have you thought of this?"
Well, he found his niche.
Yeah.
Because he's darn good at it, man.
Yeah, as are you. So as you were growing up, siblings?
I had an older sister, but that was 14 years older, so she wasn't around much. She was gone.
So you were an only child, really?
Pretty much an only child.
Yeah,
but not spoiled.
Well, that's okay. The youngest always is. I've got a baby sister who's how much younger is she than me? Like 11 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And she grew up as an only child. She's got a bunch of siblings who are really older, who are really just young parents to her. That's the way you grow up. But in high school, I know you're working in restaurants and all, but you also talked a little bit about working on farm.
Oh yeah, my uncle, my family in Kentucky, where we ended up moving. My papa had 100 acres, so I'd spend time with him, and my uncle, which was married to my mom's sister, he farmed 2,200 acres, and so I would work with him some in the summer too, working on the farm, and I drove an International Harvester 1206, dual wheels in the back all day long, every day.
What were you farming? Tobacco?
I have farmed tobacco, but it was primarily corn and soybeans. But I've worked in tobacco too, and it's hard. That is hard work. Good money, but hard work. And strip the tobacco and stuff, get all over your hands, climb up in the barn, put it up, let it dry, dark and burley.
Yeah, because you had to hang it and let it dry for how long?
I don't know. A while. I mean, like a while. And then take it to market, and then they sell it. I work primarily on the tractor with soybeans and corn, and it was good work. We'd start early. We'd go all day long. And I was real young then, too, probably. And I was driving big tractors and big trucks when I was 13, 14.
Because
it's out in the middle of nowhere. You can't really do much damage.
Isn't that where the hardship license came up with, where they let farm kids start driving at like 14 or something like that?
Yes. I think you're right. Yeah. It was a great life, though. So I worked in restaurants, worked in construction some, and when I was real young, worked on the farm, and we'd be hauling soybean for 40, 50-pound bags, and it'd make a man out of you. And I was a pretty small, scrawny kid too, so that's probably was really good for me.
Yeah. So at this point, and I'm asking this because of what you do with KZ now, is music important to you at this point as a kid?
Oh my gosh, yes, yeah, music is really important. I think back, listening to Black Sabbath, Paranoid in my room. They're real loud. What my mom and dad must have been thinking. They're probably thinking, I don't know, Marge, how do we go wrong? Because I loved classic rock when it was current.
When it was rock. It was just rock.
Rock. Yeah, when it was rock, I was into it.
That was a great time to grow up because that's when all the music was being created.
Yeah, my mom and dad, I remember, used to have these get-togethers, and there was one day, his name was Jack, and he brought me a Grand Funk Railroad Survival album, and it was one they're kind of all caveman in the front of it. And I said, "Why'd you pick that one?" He goes, "I don't know. It just looked cool." He had no idea what it was all about, but I remember he gave that to me, and I remember the first Creedence album that I got, and Rolling Stones, and just formative years, man, when you'd sit and listen to the albums. And it's fascinating now that albums are so popular again.
Yeah.
that whole transition of technology where you went from albums to cassette players to 8-tracks and
CDs,
finally CDs, and finally everything on hard drive. So and now the vinyl is so important again, which is cool.
Did you hang on to any of your vinyl?
I did. I got a bunch of them, and I met a guy here. We're bouncing around a lot, but I met a guy here. Tom Zutot is his name.
No.
Tom Zutot he worked for a record company years ago in his formative years, and he was just the guy that sent out promotional copies to radio stations. And he happened to be in California, Los Angeles, and he saw the Whiskey A Go-Go and Motley Crue sold out. He wanted, what's that band all about? And so he finally finagles his way in. He says, I'm going to get you guys signed to a record label. And he did. And then he discovered Guns N' Roses. And then he did an album with Def Leppard. He named the band Tesla. And he lives here in town, sells cars at Ed Kirby. And he's all about the vinyl. And the guy has this tremendous knowledge about who produced what and the vinyl, what to look for in the records, what makes them valuable. And so that's been a nice learning curve. And so he's looked through some of mine. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, yeah, keep her there. Oh, yeah, that's not so good there. Yeah.
You know what I missed when it went from albums to cassettes to CDs was the artwork on an album cover or in the album. That was worth half the price.
The artwork, the words.
Yeah,
you'd spend so much time looking at it. Yes, I know.
Yeah, you could, because if you get a cassette tape, you're having to unfold all this stuff, and it's
not the same vibe.
No, not the same thing. Plus, a lot of people use those album covers for other purposes.
I've heard that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been told that.
I've seen it on TV. In movies.
So as growing up, you're obviously a big music fan, but you also got into hunting and fishing, and I don't know why, but I didn't take you as a hunting and fishing guy.
Oh, I love it, man. I grew up in the woods, squirrel hunting, small game hunting, not deer hunting, and because, while I was growing up, deer were not nearly as plentiful as they are now. I mean, there were some deer around, so we'd rabbit hunt, squirrel hunt. Quail were prevalent in Kentucky, so you'd see coveys of quail, and we'd hunt. Yeah, with my dad and with my papaw. Yeah, I grew up. I remember I was 9 years old, and we went rabbit hunting. We had 3 beagles, and so we go out, and I take this. It was Stevens or Sears and Roebuck 16-gauge shotgun. It had a pretty short barrel, and so my papa said, well, you can use this. And so I shot it a few times. We went out and watched the dog chase the rabbit around, and my dad goes, here it comes. And I'm standing right by him. And I shot this rabbit, and it was like incredible. We would take it back and dress it at the house there. And so I cleaned the shotgun, put it back where it went in the house. And my papa says, hey, so you're going to take your gun with you? I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, that's yours. That's yours. I still got it.
Wow.
And I was 9 years old. And
wow. And you still have it?
I still have it, yeah. And I had it redone, and I shot it the other day, as a matter of fact.
Did you really? I was going to ask you if you...
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, and I'll never forget that moment. That was an incredible moment for me because I had no idea it was coming. But I'd had BB guns and stuff, but I hadn't had anything else.
So when you shot it the other day, did it bring back a lot?
All the memories, because I shot it and hunted a bunch, too. Because I've collected some guns. I'm into shooting. I like to, quail hunt now.
So you still hunt?
Deer hunt. I do. I love to shoot, love to hunt. Yeah, it's one of my passions.
So growing up, you have a pretty idyllic rural life.
Yes. Even though I had lived in the city a good hunk of my life, 20, 30 minutes away, I was in the woods.
Yeah, you're in the woods, and you go off to school at Henderson Community College. You take this speech class. Why were you taking this speech class?
I don't know if I had to. I think I just picked it. I think it was an elective class, and I just ended up picking it, and it ended up with all these people. I remember this guy was a great teacher.
You remember his name?
Joe Salania.
Joe Salania.
Joe Salania was his name. He had kind of an Italian guy, had dark hair, had it kind of greased back, and the smoke of this Chesterfield. It was Chesterfield cigarettes. I'm almost positive too, with no filter. He teaches class. What about that? But he was just a great teacher and had tremendous passion for what has become my lifelong passion, and that's broadcasting.
Did you stay in touch with him as you grew your career?
I did not.
Yeah.
No, I did not.
So you take his class. He convinces you to go work at this
radio station, WBIC, and I'm glad that I don't have many of those air checks because, man, I was horrible. I was terrible. But it's what got me going.
How long were you there?
I was there for a fairly short period of time, and there was another radio station in those days that was automated and had directional programming on it, and we had big reels, and then we had cart machines, and we had a click, click, click where go across there, one to the other. And so basically all my job was to program and make sure that everything was running. I think I recorded a weather forecast, but that was it. I wasn't on the air much. But there was another hot rockin' kind of the Memphis kind of a station that you had, hot rockin', flame-throwing AM station was the River City Rocker 1280 WGBF.
There you go.
All I wanted to do was be on the rocker. And so I wore this one guy out. Buddy Scott was his name. And he was an incredible talent. I first listened to him doing 6 to 10 on that radio station. And I'd send tapes and until finally, I think I wore him down. And I wore him down, and he hired me. Actually, I tell you how I got hired. I believe Eric, he was Eric Stone, the Stone Man, with me on a rock station up there. Eric was working on WGBF overnights on the weekends, and that's what I took, Saturday night to Sunday morning, midnight to 6, and Monday morning, midnight to 6. And I think he ended up putting one of his buddies on the air, and Buddy Scott caught it and fired him, and that's how I got in. Then later, Eric comes down here and works and comes and recruits me to come to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Isn't it crazy how, and the radio and television business is all across America, is such a close-knit group of talent.
Yeah, and you never know who you're going to run into. And I know that's true in every business. And someone you meet in one job, you might be their superior, and then all of a sudden you meet them in another job and you're their subordinate.
Happens all the time. It's why, and all the people that have come and gone from KZ and from the Radio Ranch, and I came as a program director for KZ, then Danny Brown gave me the opportunity to take on some additional responsibilities and become operation manager for the building. First, I watched over the talk stations with Bill Lockhart, and then 107.9, and so I did some other stuff. And all the people that have come and gone, you've seen this too, and when they leave, you always try to tell people, man, just don't burn the bridge, man.
Don't burn bridges.
Don't be nasty, because you never know when it's going to come back around. And most people get that, but there are some that have not gotten that, whose names I won't mention, by the way.
Well, and you're talking a lot about networking from the standpoint and building relationships that, you work with someone, don't burn the bridge because you don't know where you're going to, come back across them. Or you also don't know who's going to recommend you. Someone that you work with on an ancillary basis might say, I know this guy.
He's good.
Yeah, he's good.
And you didn't hear him on the internet, because in those days, if you wanted to hear somebody, you either had to have somebody record them there or road trip, and you go listen to the radio station.
Yeah.
You hear people saying, man, this station in Kansas City or Denver or Baltimore or wherever it might be, you got to hear them. Well, if you got to hear them, you got to go there. And so people would go and listen and record.
Well, and to a great degree, your career mirrors the heyday of radio. I mean, the early radio in the 50s and 60s and AM, but you really were there for the birth of FM.
Yes, I was. I sure was.
How was FM so different than AM, and not just in the sound, but really how you went about playing your craft as a DJ?
Well, the early days in FM, it was a lot of easy listening, and then it would move to album rock, and you'd play, hey, good evening, what's going on now?
We're going to play Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, here's money.
Exactly. 107.9, the end. Or whatever it was. It was kind of like that, and you play the whole, so it was a very different style. And all those styles, the hot rocking, yelling, screaming, WGBF, and then the album rock era, AOR era, all happened, kind of. And it was a lot were playing the same music on both radio stations.
So how did FM overtake AM? Quality of the sound?
Quality of the signal, yeah. Stereo.
But AM survived.
Yes, it survived. And then some big news talk AMs have not only survived, but thrived in bigger markets. But I remember a time when the AM band was just like about over because FM had just taken it. Until Rush Limbaugh came along, and Rush Limbaugh saved the AM band for a long period of time.
I told you earlier that my first job in broadcasting was selling for WHBQ in Memphis. And at that time, despite WHBQ's music legacy, having played the first Elvis Presley record ever, That's All Right, Mama, it was a news talk station at the time. And this was pre-Rush Limbaugh. This was when all your hosts were local. And I remember when Rush Limbaugh appeared on the scene as a syndicated show.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely changed the equation. Whether you liked him or not, absolutely changed the equation.
Lightning bolt for audience. When I came to town, WGOW was a music station. It was a middle of the road, MOR, kind of a music station. David Earl Hughes did the afternoon show there. Gary Mack and Dale Deason did the morning show. Those guys in the morning, they were great. Randy Price did middays. And it was a music station. And then we picked off David Earl and started the KZ106 Morning Zoo. Greg Schaefer and I did. And David Earl, we partnered with Jay Scott, the Jammer, Randy Ross, who was a part-timer that worked at KZ106. And he became the tamer of the zoo, and he produced the show. And we put all that morning show together. But I guess and it was an incredible morning show and a great radio station, and it was awesome. But the AM just kind of dwindled away, and then then we had started having some talk shows, and Don Welch did a talk show on WGOW for a while. Know that. He sure did. I bet he was good. He was good.
So how exactly did you get to Chattanooga? You're doing the radio stations in Kentucky.
I am. So Eric Page, who was Eric Stone, the Stone man there, became Eric Page here. He was the morning guy on KZ106. The original morning guy was, of course, David Carroll. And there was a couple of other transitional periods there, and then Eric was the morning guy for a long time. Eric and I had worked in the Evansville market at when WGBF, the big AM station, and we had bought an FM station at the time. And Greg Schaefer was the operations manager, and I was working part-time on WGBF, and he goes, man, we're going to start. So we started the album station, KC103, the album station. It was one of those.
It was KZ103.
It was KC103.
Oh, KC.
KC103, the album station. And so we started that. I did mornings, he did nights, and then I had gotten married at the time when I was there, and the radio station becomes your life. It's a lifestyle. Yeah. And
it's like the restaurant business.
It's not a job. You don't go and leave and forget about it. You take it with you wherever you go. And so and I was taking it with me wherever I go. And my wife at the time said, man, you need to spend more time and get a real job. So I got a real job. Man, bad mistake. So I get out of the business.
What was the real job?
I sold industrial processing equipment, pneumatic conveying systems that would suck and blow product from one. Is that not crazy? I'd go into factories and stuff and talk to these people that were making, cups, plastic cups, and they brought it in by rail, and we would develop pneumatic conveying systems with butterfly valves, would suck it from one place to another. And it wasn't me, man. It was not me.
We're kindred spirits. That's what I was doing when I got out of school. It wasn't pneumatic conveyor systems. We did conveyor systems, but it was all materials handling equipment. It was forklifts. It was anything in a warehouse.
How about that?
And me with a measuring tape is a bad idea.
I see trucks rolling down the road. I see the butterfly valves, and these were Keystone butterfly. I tell Julia, my wife, I said, look at that. That's a lever lock handle. That's the actuator for that. She's like, what? So I do that. I got
How long did you do that?
I don't know, for not a long period, probably 2 years.
That was here in Chattanooga?
Yeah, I was up in Evansville.
In Evansville.
Evansville in Kentucky. And that marriage failed, and then I lost my job because there was a downturn, and they're like, man, we just can't pay. And so I'm suddenly out of a job, and I'm back living with my mom and dad on the farm, and thinking, man, what am I going to do? So I couldn't find a job. Could not find a gig. And I was looking here, there, and now on radio, and I thought about other things. So I go to this is coal mining country.
Yeah.
And so there's a coal mine school in Madisonville, Kentucky, about 10 minutes from where I live. And I said, well, in those days, you go in the coal mines, you make good money right off the bat. I said, well, I can't find anything. I'm just hanging out here and drinking beer and whiskey, and I probably need to do something with myself. So I go to the school. I remember, I have no idea who was teaching it. but he had black lung, obviously. And I sit there and I sit there and think it was like, I don't know, 3-month class or something like that. It was underground coal mines where you go in underground miles. And it was like 3 foot or 4, so narrow down below. The whole time I'm thinking, man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so I remember my mom had a beauty shop, a hairstyling center at the Ramada Inn in Henderson. I used to go and party at the Ramada there, and I could walk right down the hall and hang out and go to sleep there. The whole time I'm getting ready to go to work in the coal mines, I'm thinking, man, if I could just get a job at a radio station or spend. So a guy named Gabe Hobbs, who had worked with me at the automated station that became WKDQ, he calls me. He goes, man, there's a nightclub over here, and they're looking for a DJ. Would you like to do it? It's on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. They'll pay you $8 an hour. And
wow.
I said, hell yes.
Yeah.
I do.
That's good money.
It was great money. It was the Victory. We had a dance floor that would hold 1,000 people.
Well, and that's when being a DJ at a nightclub was different than being a DJ today at a nightclub, wasn't it?
I think they're all similar. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's
but you were
women
scratching records.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, that's fun, too.
Really?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I sure did.
Well, it shows you what I know.
Yeah, I did it for Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday for quite a while, and it was fun. And I had a blast. And then I got a job opened up at the radio station where Gabe Hobbs and says, man, I'll hire you here now to work on the air. So,
but because of your relationships, you were able to get back into doing what you were doing.
The networking thing we just spoke about happened for me right before I was getting ready to go in the coal mine.
I mean, I'm just trying to picture this. You go to work in radio, you love it, you decide to get out for whatever reasons, and then you're struggling to get back in to the point to where you go to a coal mining school.
Yes, because I was going to make like $40,000 a year, and this was 1980.
That's great money.
Yes, yeah, and but I didn't want to go, man. I didn't want to go.
Did you ever go down?
Never did.
Wow.
I was all prepared. Like the next week, I was going to graduate, and I'm thinking it was the Pyro Mining Company that I applied to. They were going to hire me, and that's when I got the job. And Dad's like, well, man, that's probably a good thing. I'm glad you don't go by that nasty.
Could you imagine?
Dangerous. How my career would have changed? Yes.
Quick question. What do they teach you at coal mining school?
Just to safety, primarily.
Is it all really safety more than anything else?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing that.
I couldn't either, but it was one of those things that I can do this, and but I didn't do that.
So that gets you the gig in the nightclub. The gig in the nightclub gets you back on radio.
Yes.
You're back on radio.
And I get back on radio and worked, this AM station with classic hits and the top 40 station, 99.5 WKDQ. Worked there for a period of time. It was sold. Actually, it was sold to, I believe, a guy that's from Johnson City that owns the big country station there. I think that's who bought that. And at the time, I was like assistant program director. Gabe Hobbs had moved on and gone into news talk. And a guy named Ron Payne. Ron Payne was the PD. And so I told Ronnie D, man, great guy. Left and went to Tampa and worked for a long time. So I kept up with him. It was sold, and I said, man, they're going to change the format. They're going to blow us all out. He goes, yeah, it happens. And so about that same time, Eric calls me, and he goes, man, I want you to come. We want to talk to you about something. So I meet at the Ramada Inn, actually, that my mom had the beauty shop in years ago, and my dad was the restaurant bar manager. And so we meet there, and he goes, man, come down here and work with us. He goes, I don't really like to work with anybody, but I don't want anybody to be my boss, but I really like you. Will you come down and be my boss in Chattanooga? I go, you know what? Yes, I will. So I quit that job, came down here, worked with Greg Schaefer and Eric.
Had you been to Chattanooga before? Did you come
Never.
sight unseen?
I think, but I remember this is when one of the first cars I drove was a 1964 Chevrolet Impala. My dad bought it, 1964, for $3,200. And I don't know how old I was. I was young. And the first trip we took was to the Smoky Mountains. And I think I had come through Chattanooga, and my dad had told me, but I had no recollection of it.
So you moved here 85, 84?
January New Year's Day, 1985 was the one I didn't work much that day, but that's when they started paying me.
And so you're here in the mid '80s, which are not Chattanooga's heydays.
No,
this was a completely different town. All the manufacturing had left in the '80s, and it was really a town on the
decline.
That's
without a doubt, man. Nobody wanted to go downtown.
Yeah,
Ross's Landing. The only thing that happened there was River Bend.
Yep.
And the Great Tennessee River Raft Race, which was an incredible event. What I was just talking to some guys the other day about it. Can you believe that KZ106 and the JCs, to benefit Camp Discovery in Orange Grove, used to do a raft race where we would launch, people would build their own rafts. They build their own rafts and launch from the dam at 153 and float down to Ross's Landing, partying and drinking beer all day long.
No casualties?
None. How did we do that? And we'd have fun, and some were like high tech that engineers would build, and they were fast, and others, barely made it or didn't make it, and then we'd have a big party, the Great Tennessee River Jam. And Foreigner played there, and Eddie Money, and Atlanta Rhythm Section, all these people would play. And that was a big party at Ross's Landing. Otherwise, there was nothing going on. There was no aquarium. There was no big river. There was no...
So what was your thought when you moved here? I'm going to be in Chattanooga a couple of years, then go to the next big radio gig, or were you just pleased as punch to be here?
I liked it here right off the bat. I remember I came here, and one of the first places we went was to Nashville to go to Charlie Daniels' Volunteer Jam.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, and Kentucky, Indiana, Kentucky, not really South, but I thought to myself, man, I like it here. I want to live here, and build a home here, build my family here, and I did, and I love it. I've had a couple of chances. I could have gone to Atlanta, and Baltimore, and Nashville. And there are a number of different places I could have left and gone, but I didn't want to. I came in 1985. I met my wife, Julie.
Well, and tell that story, too.
Oh, man. So we're going to Riverbend, the other event that happened at Ross's Landing, the other thing that would draw you downtown. And we're parking at backstage at Riverbend so we can go down and work our booth there. And at the time, the Ottawa band boosters were parking the cars and making the money for parking there. And Julie's dad, and she went to Ottawa High School, and her dad and mom, the whole family kind of worked with the band boosters raising money. So I go there one day, and I see this girl, and we wave and talk and have casual conversation, and we go about our business for the 8 days at Riverbend, and I go about my business and don't see her until the next year. And I'm back, and we're parking the van. I go, man, I remember you from last year. You want to go and have a beer, hang out for a little while? She goes, yes. And so we did. And
she made an impression on you. You could go a year and boom.
And then I'll go back, I go, wow. And at the time, I was living over in Red Bank at what was a block garage that had been turned into an apartment. Randy Ross lived in the house, and I lived in the apartment. And Julia she always thought that place was haunted. She goes, man, this place is haunted. I said, no, it's not haunted. So we left there and moved away. But met her one year, didn't see her until the next year, and then have been together ever since.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who met their spouse at Riverbend, but you're the first one I've met.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. And we were married 35 years last November.
Well, and your radio station was a big part of Riverbend over the years.
Massive. Yeah. KZ has been and there are others in town that have also been great radio stations too, but it's done so much for the community. When I go, Mike, to an event now, and I have people that come up to me and say, I've listened to you my whole life. My dad listened to KZ106, and I've listened to you my whole life. And I'd have people, I remember when you did middays, you do the Midday Chaser Turn Alert. I got so many sunburns because of you back in the day. I said, how old were you? Oh, Sheila, I was 15, 16. And they're,
Well, explain what that was.
Well, it's an incredible feeling to realize that you've been a small part of people's life for that amount of time. And we've kind of grown up together, where I'd host things like the Thanksgiving Day Turkey Trot at the Sports Barn that I've done since the very beginning, which is now the fitness center, but it was the Sports Barn. And I'd meet people on Thanksgiving morning, and I've done it for decades, you know, And I'd meet them, and they'd have a little baby at the time, and then suddenly that baby is 10, and then 18, and then they're there with their girlfriend or boyfriend, and then the next year they're married, and then the next year they've got kids. And I thought, wow, it's so generational that I've had this. I've been so blessed to be able to do something that is just such, to become a part of the fabric of the community.
You know, it's true in television too. And the way I always put it is that people are consciously inviting you into their living room or their car.
Man, it's 101. It's almost always 101. One of the mistakes I think that broadcasters make a lot of times, especially in radio, maybe not so much in television, because you are going to be in the living room probably watching, is they, hey, y'all, folks, you're not speaking to a crowd.
No,
you're speaking one-on-one. Hey, what's going on with you today? How is it right now? Look out, man, is the sun not gorgeous as it begins to set over Lookout Mountain? Man, would Zeppelin be good? Now here's Black Dog, KZ106. So that's what you're doing. You're with somebody. What are you going to do this weekend? What are you going to do when you get home?
We got to edit in Black Dog. That would be a nice touch.
Mama. Yeah, what are you going to do tonight, man? It's going to be beautiful. It's been so cold. Now it's turned sunny and 70. What do you like, the new time, daylight savings time? I do, because I work in the evening. Now when I get home, it's light. It's beautiful. So yesterday afternoon, I'm thinking, well, I think what I'm going to do on my way home, I'm going to blow by Food City and get something and crank up the coals and throw it on the grill and have a cold beer. What are you doing tonight? So it's a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. So talk about some of that from from 85 up, of the importance of KZ and what you experienced in terms of how Chattanooga was changing and some of the bands that came through and some of the things that the station did.
One of the biggest things we did the Great Tenor for Rafrix, which was based, the Block Party was a free concert that happened on July 3rd. Charlie Daniels, all these people played. We did a promotion on Brainerd Road, and that's when Brainerd Road was where everybody cruised.
That was the spot.
Everybody cruised up and down Brainerd Road, and it was all cool. And it was not only accepted, it was encouraged.
Yeah.
And we had something that was called the KZ106 Miller Beer Studio in the Sky. And people that have been here for a while know exactly what that was. It was right above the bowling alley, and we would climb up on a billboard and broadcast to Brainerd Road. And it was
every week.
We did, like, throughout the summer. We did every day. I mean, I'd be up there sometimes. I did middays at the time, and I would be up there middays.
Oh, that had to be hot.
It was hot, but it was awesome, man. It was incredible. I remember one night, Blake Watson, who was
good friend.
Yeah, well, he's a great dude, man.
Yeah, he is a good guy.
So Blake Watson is a part-timer at the radio station, and I think it's a Saturday night, and I think maybe Wendy or Mike Allison was in the control room, but Blake and I are up on the billboard, and we're playing Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger, and the Brainerd Road is packed out, and they're all listening to KZ106, and they all got it cranked up, and they're bah, 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 honking their horns. I thought, this is alive. This beats the heck out of being in the coal mine.
That is a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, it was a great time, man. We had those times, and I remember. There's so many others too. Well, I remember we lost Vicki Connor, who was a salesperson who worked for GT 108 when 107.9 was a oldie station way back. She was the sales manager, and she had got breast cancer and eventually got her. And we were thinking, well, what do we do? We got to do something. And I remember, so we did the thing. Danny Brown was there at that time.
Another good guy.
One of the best.
Yeah, I love Danny.
The best.
Yeah.
So Danny Brown is there, and he goes, man, let's do a thing called Pennies for Vicki. It'll be the quest for 1,000,000 pennies. And so we all go and take the radio stations to this location. Well, we got to 1,000,000 pennies fast.
Pretty quick. Pretty
fast. And raised a bunch of money. The next year we did Pennies for Vicki. It wasn't nearly as quick because everybody had eliminated all the change.
They had no pennies.
Yeah, everybody's got a bucket of change. Well, once it's gone, it's gone. So we keep it, and we keep this going. But it's one of those things where people would bring their life savings of change and dump it into a big. It was awesome. And so this charity happened for a long period of time, and finally. We weren't paying as much attention to it as we should have. And I said, man, we got to divest this money and do something with this money. So I'm at home talking to Julie. I said, what do you think we ought to do? And we're friends with the Websters and knew about Lana Beth. And she goes, and they had started Lana's Love.
You're talking about Jim Webster.
I am Jim Webster and his wife and family, and Cole, that's just wonderful people, incredible family.
Yeah.
And so Julie, my best friend in life, says you ought to give that rest of that money to Jim Webster, Atlanta's Love. So we go to his golf tournament. I'll never forget this moment. It almost brings tears to my eyes. And I think we had almost $13,000 left. I think it was like $12,700 and blah, blah, blah. So we have a check all written up. And I told Jim Webster, I said, man, during the lunch here, when the morning team foursome are coming in the afternoons, I want to say some things to the audience. Would you mind? He goes, no, man, you're Scott Chase. You can talk. You're a talker. So I go up and I've got the check and I start talking about Vicky and Pennies for Vicky and that charity. And then then I moved right into Atlanta's Love, and I presented Jim Webster with a check for that amount of money, and he's like, big old tear came to his eyes. It was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Yeah. I'll never forget it. But there are so many times where when I was on the board of the Kidney Foundation, where we'd go deliver food baskets to needy families and people that are dealing with dialysis and getting dialysis and just feeding their family. There's that, the JCs, and the fact we helped Orange Grove and Camp Discovery. And
I think that's one of the things for the generation of like my daughters that they missed that we got to experience was the camaraderie of a broadcast station, because there's so many options today. Back when I was growing up, you were growing up, 3 TV stations and your local radio station.
Yes.
To your point, you couldn't go stream something. You couldn't get on YouTube and find what you wanted. But you found, for lack of a better term, your people by the radio station you listened to.
That's true.
By the television stations.
Yes.
And the community service aspect of those stations was huge, because we all had an FCC license and you had to do a certain amount, but it's also what connected you to the community.
It's why I tell everybody who goes to work there, this is why we have the license. We serve in the public interest,
right?
And don't ever lose sight of that. And yes, our business has gone through some changes, and certainly now we're owned by a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, not just a family like it once was, where they had this market, the Evansville market, and Johnson City. That was it. So this business has changed dramatically in so many different ways, ownership-wise and technology-wise. I mean, we went through the time where we're playing albums, and then we went to carts, which are kind of like an 8-track cart, but weren't. And then we went to CDs. The first CD that KZ ever owned was Bryan Adams' Reckless, and we went through that, and sometimes they'd skip, and then they got better CDs. And then we go to, all the music's on a hard drive, and the first hard drives we had, they were all squeezed down MP whatever, small. So you take the high quality dynamics of an album, which is still the best. The vinyl is the best, no matter what. You can't listen to anything where it sounds better. So we go from that, and we're making advances, but lowering the quality of the music that we're playing. Now, then the hard drive space increases, and now you can put a bunch in there. So now we have big WAV files, and the quality has increased dramatically. But the technology has been such, and I remember the original GM, Don Newberg, which you may or may not know.
I didn't know.
What an incredible man. He was actually the manager of WGBF, the hot rock and flame throwing, and then came down here. And he told me one time when technology was beginning to change, he goes, this business that you're in right now, there are going to be fewer and fewer people eventually that do what you do. But the best will be multi-talented. They'll be able to do a lot, and they'll rise to the top and be able to make a good living. And basically, he is right. When I moved here, we had the morning zoo with 3 people in the morning. We had me in midday, somebody that's 2 to 6 in the afternoon, 6 to 10 at night, 10 to 2, and 2 to 6 in the morning. We had a tremendous amount of people that worked there. And technology has given us the ability to do more with less, which is good and bad. It eliminated a lot of jobs for people and continues to, but gave other people that could do a variety of different things a chance to make a good living.
What would you tell a kid today, a teenager today, or a college student today who's pursuing broadcasting? Would you encourage them, or would you say, hey, there's a coal mining school?
I probably wouldn't go that direction. Still, what I do is the same, even though technology has advanced so quickly. And we're doing things so much differently. We can do so much remotely now, and everything you can Google and find out everything from everything. But still, when I go out and I go to an event like the Hunter Worley benefit that I did this past Saturday night that I was there, and my buddy David Brown, who goes back to the Alethea Daves at the Great Tennessee River Raft Race 40 years ago, is on stage. And I talk to people, and they're like, man, I've listened to you my whole life. I remember that time you did this. I remember that time. And boy, it was really cool, the case one. So that part of what I do is exactly the same as the first time I did it. It's just there are other things in people.
I like the way you put that, though. You're not really doing anything different. Your job is to connect with the audience.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter the technology, but
Nope.
if you can connect with the audience, it doesn't matter if it's streamed. It doesn't matter if it's broadcast. It doesn't matter if it's on a cart. It just doesn't matter.
No.
It's people wanting to spend time with Scott Chase.
Yes. And they give me the opportunity of spending some time with them.
And they've
which I
spent
don't
40
take
years
lightly.
with you.
I don't take lightly either.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. This is a great city, and this is my home. And I am just so blessed to be able to do what I do. So if I was talking to somebody, I'd tell them that I don't remember the bad things much. I have our current market manager, his name is John Lewis. He's a great guy, one of the most inspirational people I've ever met in my life, a great leader, great salesperson. And we were talking about somebody that had left the radio station because we wanted him to a while back, and they go, man, what happened? Why did that happen? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. He goes, you've got the same affliction I do. We don't remember the bad things. And I don't. They just kind of go away, and I remember the good things.
And that's the best way to be, because you can't change anything.
No.
Yeah. So why commiserate over it?
The windshield's big, the rear view's small.
That's always
Live
been,
life that way.
That's always been my favorite analogy.
It's the truth.
I do have a couple more questions for you before we run out of time. One of them is, what was the first song you ever played on KZ?
Oh man, first song we played was Steve Lee at FM when it went on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
I
don't
think it was a ZZ Top song.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Legs.
Not Four Legs. It would have been LaGrange or
LaGrange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but what a great question, man.
I finally got you.
You got me.
Well, you mentioned you love Chattanooga. You've been here 40 years, and obviously Chattanooga loves you because you've been able to connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get to that last question, I want to remind our listeners who makes all this possible, and that's thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. You can follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do-good-here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. Last question for you, Scott. What would you tell that 25-year-old Scott Chase is important for a happy life?
Do what you love. I don't work.
Yeah.
No, what I do is not work. It's a passion, and I'm happy about it. And look at people that live a long time. They're not people that complain and see the cup half empty. There are people that their cup is overflowing, and connect with people and do something that you love. I did something that I loved. I got away from a short period of time, but I quickly realized
you love it.
What my passion was, and I went right back to it.
Did your parents put that attitude in you?
No, but they certainly encourage. Yes, I think they did. They encouraged that. Yeah, without a doubt. My early part of my career and doing something that you enjoy. There are so many people that have not had the opportunity of going and doing something every day that they loved. It was a job where they went and they did it and they couldn't wait to get away. Now, that's important. Don't get me wrong. And I appreciate those people, whatever they might do, and the fact that they do it. But that's just not for me. I've got to, if this ever got to where it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it.
Well, and I think you make a great point, because so many people get to the point of golden handcuffs. I can't go do what I love because it won't pay me the money that I'm making now.
I remember one of the times when, and we've been through, I think, 5 ownership changes since I've been there. So there are 5 different companies that owned us, and everyone's a little bit different. There are challenges and there are demands and of your time. And the general manager, it was Danny Brown. And he was a bit stressed because of whatever it might be. And you understand, because you managed a television station, so you had ownership changes. So you know what I'm talking about. Anytime
I saw that Baltimore area code, my blood pressure would go up.
So he's tight, and I walk into his office. I'm like, man, come on. This is what we do is entertainment. This is fun. I'm not going to do it if it's not fun. What do you mean? It's not about fun. I said, it's going to be fun for me or I won't do it. And he never got like that. And so later, like an hour later, he calls me and goes, man, I'm so sorry. I barked at you a while ago. You're right. What we do is entertainment and fun. And if you ever lose sight of that, you've lost, because people will see through you so quickly. So if you're not real and you don't carry yourself as such, what we do will go away. Everybody has thought radio was going to go away. Radio's going away. Oh, man, CDs are here. Cassettes are here. Radio's going away. Now there's Spotify. Now there's this, there's that. No, as long as you're relevant, as long as you're local, as long as your content is stimulating and interesting and meaningful, radio will be fine, and is fine today and will continue to be fine. There'll be just different ways that people can access what we do. And this is one of the ways that we're doing right now, this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you make an excellent point, and I love the fact that you talk about being real. And I've had the privilege of knowing you now for a couple years.
You're a good golfer, by the way. We haven't done that in a while.
No,
everybody's good compared to me.
I'm the worst golfer in the world anymore. But I do want to say you are real. The Scott Chase I know on the golf course is the Scott Chase that I'm sitting across from is the Scott Chase who's on the air.
Thank you.
In the afternoon. So I really appreciate you coming and doing this. Congratulations on 40 years.
Thank you.
I'm looking for another 40.
Rock on.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.